Hey there, this is Dark Eudaimonia with a response, I suppose, to Dr. Craig videos for making these The Wit of Dr. Craig things. In February of 2009, I debated Dr. Craig. I found him to be actually quite a nice guy. We chatted back and forth a little bit in the dressing room, that sort of thing. And I thought it went really well. I shook his hand after the debate. But then I saw this video online.
Such that some of our finest philosophers at our most prestigious universities are now outspoken Bible-believing Christians.
Sir?
I'm sorry, where is this philosophical revolution taking place?
In the Anglo-American realm.
The ones dominated by assumed atheists, like people like Eyre, people like Bertrand Russell, who really dominated. Like, well, I'm sorry, I just never have heard
What was the first
this.
thing you said?
I think you meant Eyre.
Oh, Frank
A.J. Eyre.
A.J. Eyre.
But that's a bygone generation, Michael. I'm talking about today.
Okay, let's talk about people from today, like Quine, right?
He's dead too.
Well, he died only a couple of years, like
So did
few
Freddie
years
Eyre,
ago.
but I mean...
Let's talk about, let's name names, people like Richard Swinburne at Oxford University, Robert and Marilyn Adams at Oxford, Brian Leftow at Oxford, people like Alvin Planning at University of Notre Dame, Peter Van Inwagen, Dallas Willard, Eleanor Stump. I mean, I could go on and on naming names at top universities in America and England who are outspoken Christians, such that the face of my discipline, compared to the 1930s and 40s, when Russell and Eyre were dominant, has been utterly transformed.
The video is titled, "New Atheists Aren't That Bright." Now that wasn't very nice. I felt a need to respond to this. It seems that there is tons of these videos around the internet. Here's another one from Dr. Peter Atkins.
Do you deny that science cannot account for everything?
Yes, I do deny that science...
So what can't it account for?
Well, had you brought that up in the debate, I had a number of examples that I was going to give. I think there are a good number of things that cannot be scientifically proven, but that we're all rational to accept. Let me list 5. Logical and mathematical truths cannot be proven by science. Science presupposes logic and math, so that to try to prove them by science would be arguing in a circle. Metaphysical truths, like there are other minds other than my own, or that the external world is real, or that the past was not created 5 minutes ago with an appearance of age, are rational beliefs that cannot be scientifically proven. Ethical beliefs about statements of value are not accessible by the scientific method. You can't show by science whether the Nazi scientists in the camps did anything evil as opposed to the scientists in Western democracies. Aesthetic judgments, number 4, cannot be accessed by the scientific method because the beautiful, like the good, cannot be scientifically proven. And finally, most remarkably, would be science itself. Science cannot be justified by the scientific method. Science is permeated with unprovable assumptions. For example, in the special theory of relativity, the whole theory hinges on the assumption that the speed of light is constant in a one-way direction between any 2 points A and B. But that strictly cannot be proven. We simply have to assume that in order to hold to the theory.
But you're missing the whole...
So put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So we are... none of these beliefs can be scientifically proven, and yet they are accepted by all of us, and we're rational.
If I'm put into the same category as Peter Atkins, then I shouldn't be doing too bad. But I wanted to investigate this a little further because I think it's pretty cheap. I think it's a way of quote mining. Notice how none of the people who are being viewed in these videos are actually given the opportunity to respond. So again, I think this is all kind of pretty cheap. Now, I actually go through Dr. Craig's podcasts, and I thought it might be fun to investigate whether or not Dr. Craig had said any ridiculous things himself, like, for instance, this.
Well, with respect to, say, that third point about Darwinism, there one could appeal to authority and say, look, the majority of biologists believe in these Darwinian mechanisms. And what I would want to do is say, well, then what are their supporting arguments for this? Just as someone would say, oh, the majority of scholars believe in the empty tomb. What are the supporting arguments on which they form this view? And then one would be able to share those arguments. But you see, my difficulty is that when you ask evolutionary biologists, really, Darwinism is sufficient to explain evolution? What is the evidence for that? What you get are things like the peppered moth and Darwin's finches and
the Stanley Miller experiment, things like that.
Things that simply don't provide adequate foundation for this enormous extrapolation that common descent and evolution is adequately explained by these mechanisms.
If you think that evolutionary theory is buttressed only by Darwin's finches, then you have no idea what you're talking about. Or maybe this claim.
Now, what do you think in the new heaven and the new earth when we're with the Lord?
I take it that there the veil will be removed. I said we walk by faith, not by sight. But Paul goes on to say that when we're with Christ in heaven, he says, then we will see face to face. I take it that then there will be a more intimate and closer communion with God that we don't enjoy now. And perhaps even, I take it, the physical presence of Christ in his resurrection body that we would be able to experience.
You may have missed that because the music was coming in, but that was I Can't Wait to Go to Heaven because I can experience the resurrected body of Jesus. Creepy. That one wasn't so ridiculous. It was just kind of weird. But this one is actually kind of dangerous.
Well, Haiti is a bizarre case. I was talking to a missionary who has for many years worked with Haitian missions, and he told me that in 1791, the Haitian people devoted themselves to serve Satan and evil spirits through voodoo for 200 years.
And so is this one.
To encourage a person to embark on a homosexual lifestyle is like encouraging somebody to start chain smoking or mainlining heroin.
Okay, so being on heroin, addicted to a drug, is the same as being gay. Anyone out there believe that? The issue of murder. Here's what he says.
Well, I think first we need to set the framework of a theory of ethics that will help us to understand these commands. And the framework for my ethical theory is what's called divine command morality. Now, what is that? Well, that is an ethical theory which says that our moral duties are constituted by God's commands. It is God's commandments to us that give us right and wrong, that determine what we should and should not do. And if God were to issue a command to the soldiers to kill the Canaanite people, in virtue of divine command morality, that would become their moral duty. That would become the right thing for them to do. Now, someone might say, well, then are you saying that God can command someone to murder somebody else? Is that what you're saying? No, I'm not saying that God can command you to murder someone. I'm saying that God can command you to do something which in the absence of a divine command would have been murder, but is not murder in virtue of that divine command because it now becomes your moral duty.
Now really, at what point in time do we stop taking somebody seriously? Is it when they, for instance, justify genocide or justify murder or claim that homosexuality is as bad as doing heroin? I think that level has been reached with Dr. Craig. Wouldn't you agree?